My clip for this mic broke off, so we're gonna work with what we have. So, post grad life. Wow, what a ride it has been, let me tell you that. So, let's start from the very beginning. My final year of university. When I was in my final year, it was a lot. Having just finished a year working in the industry during a placement year, I felt like my goals were a lot more aligned in terms of what I wanted to do, once I've graduated. My final year, thankfully, I think it has to do with the fact that just I am someone who's very organized. I have quite good time management skills, I'd like to say, but I'm also quite a perfectionist at times. So my degree for me was not per se difficult for me to get through. So final year went by completely fine, alhamdulillah. And I did my dissertation. My dissertation was probably the most testing time for me at that point because I just felt very lost. I mean, having not written a dissertation before and all these new things referencing and just my dissertation, I was quite lucky though because I had a 3,000 word essay, which is not a lot. It's really short for a dissertation. However, I found it more difficult because of that because I'm usually someone who finds it difficult to stay within a word count rather than reaching the word count, which meant that everything I had in there had to be really, really specific, had to answer my question and everything. When I eventually got into the flow of my dissertation and my writing time and style, what worked for me was kind of spending really long nights in the library at very odd hours, or not necessarily odd, but a lot of my friends, they were like, that is an interesting time frame. So every other day I would basically be in the library from 10 p.m. until about 4 or 5 a.m. because my logic was if I've left my house after 9 p.m., I have to, by the time I come home, I have to come home with like a really good draft or just really good work had to have been done, because it's like, why would I push myself to get out of the house, let alone go to a library, if not to get good work or a good amount of work done, which often meant that I would end up eventually getting into a really good groove of things. And fast forward, I'd end up being in the library till 5 a.m. Bless my parents and my friends who often would call me during my time at the library just to make sure I'm sane and just check in and just have a little break in between. And thankfully, my dissertation went by really well. I ended up getting the highest mark I've ever gotten, which was really great. And then I went through the final few exams here and there, and alhamdulillah, I graduated with a first class honors, which is what I wanted going to university. Now, leading up to my results day, obviously I had to prep myself for the possibility that I wouldn't get it. But also, I don't know, I guess knowing myself and everything, I was quite certain that it would be between a 2-1 and a first. And alhamdulillah, like I said, I worked hard and it all paid off. And I graduated a year today. Now, the first 2 months after graduation was all fine. It wasn't up until, I would say, September when I was starting to then apply for jobs again. I would apply every now and then, here and there, like even throughout uni, just because I knew I had to get a head start into it. Like I was already building out on my CV and everything. September comes around, start applying and applying, just like every other student, every other grad student. So I'm applying everywhere to everything, redoing cover letters, you're redoing CVs. I didn't realize how much of a toll it would take on me mentally and emotionally. I was very shocked because not at that point in time, I would say the first 3 to 4 months of me applying, I never got a response. Nothing. That's actually a fucking lie, because even after those 3 to 4 months, I would still apply and I'd get nothing. No, not even a rejection email. And just like every other grad student or everyone applying for jobs knows, you would rather get a rejection, I feel, rather than be ghosted by companies, especially those that you've reached out to personally or you've reached out based on a job application and whatnot. I'd rather get a rejection email. Sometimes the silence is just a bit too deafening, you know? I found it very difficult also because I didn't have any structure to my life. I was kind of just, getting up, applying for jobs, and doing this over and over and over again until eventually I decided, whilst I was doing all this, I'm going to spend a bit more time on my passion projects, which I believe is what definitely saves me a lot, because without even realizing it, I was definitely growing my portfolio, which at that point in time didn't seem like a big deal because I'm like, I'm not going to get anything from this, or I wasn't getting anything from it. However, it gave me structure, and little did I know it would actually make a really big impact on my job applications. Because I'm someone who just thrives on setting a goal and achieving it or going after it, just kind of not having that or the only goal I had was to obviously get a job. But I was just not getting anywhere with it. So it kind of felt like this dream that was just, it looked like it was just so close, but it was actually so far away and it was not something I could grasp. And that was very frustrating. And it's also frustrating because I like to plan my days or my holidays or just my life around something that anchors me, and not having that thing that anchors me compared to like most of my life having a degree, having exams, having school, whatever it was, it anchored me to then continue on with my life. And I didn't have it when I was dealing with this whole post grad thing. And then I kind of realized as well that post grad is depressing at times. Unless you've come out of uni with a job already secured, or you know what you want to do in the future and it's actually in motion, it is difficult. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And I found myself getting lost so often as the months went by. The J word was very triggering. The U word was very triggering. Unemployed. And you can't help what goes on or what is talked about around you. So every time people would ask, what are you doing? How's the job search going? Anything to do with it, it's very difficult to not want to break down. As dramatic as it sounds, it was quite difficult getting asked, how's the job search going? How's this going? How, because people, deep inside, like, deep down that people have the best of intentions. However, I think when you're in the middle of that kind of haze and just having all these options laid out for you, it was very difficult to answer it or to not spiral from those questions being asked. For me, I mean, all I've ever wanted to do as well is to make my parents proud. And I was doubting myself. Another thing that I've learned is the job market is shit, especially right now, and it's really difficult to get something, anything, even part time jobs or freelance jobs. There are a lot of things that are not within your control. Now, if it's not within your control, why stress, right? But at the same time, the fact that it isn't within your control also causes you stress. So it's a constant cycle that you kind of go through, or that I went through personally. Another thing I learned or realized, which I've never had a problem with before, is just, it might sound ugly, but the truth is, you will find it hard at times to clap for others when you're in the trenches. I'm someone who supports my friends and my family and everyone around me so deeply and so loudly, but deep down you will have instances where you find it's so difficult, because especially if you're like me, and it's like I felt like I was always doing something, like I was taking the right steps, I was making the right moves, I was doing something rather than nothing, and yet I was getting nothing. And I think that's what hit me at times when it's difficult, when people are getting jobs. And I fucking hated LinkedIn. I don't like it. I don't like LinkedIn until today. I very rarely go on it unless I have to do a post, because like I said, it is quite difficult sometimes to just be like, I'm doing exactly what they're doing, especially if, let's say, you know what they're doing, like to get to where they are, and you're just like, it's not working out, it's not, what is wrong, what is wrong with me, what is wrong with what I'm doing? And that's where the spiral of just doubting yourself starts to possibly come in. It didn't really hit me until March-ish, maybe like February, March. I went home for a month in April. So January, February, March, and then June were probably the most spiraling, breakdown, intense months of my life. I sound fucking dramatic, but it's true. And I'm gonna go into depth on that right now. So, the panic months, the mental breakdowns, nobody really talks much about it, because maybe some people go through it quietly. I went through it quietly. I'm just someone who prefers suffering on my own, and usually when I talk about my problems, I would have already like gotten over them and gotten through them. But it was a very difficult few months, and however, one thing that I found comfort in is books. So there are some of my favorite books that I read throughout this time frame of my life, which really, really, really helped me. So I'm gonna put them up here. First one is The Defining Decades by Meg J. Was recommended to me by a friend. Because I had just finished Dolly Alderton's books, just about being in your 20s and just feeling lost and all these things. The Defining Decades by Meg J. An amazing book. I highly recommend it. I'm always recommending it to people, especially those in their 20s, just because of how much you realize that whatever you're going through right now, you are not alone. The Defining Decades by Meg J really changed my perspective on how I started viewing my fun employed or unemployed life, or my job searching life. And there was this one therapy session she did with one of her clients where he talks about just having so many options in life, especially for people. We have so many passions. Because we have so many options, we just then don't know which to choose, because there's so many different routes you could take in life. And he said it felt like you're kind of stuck in the middle of the ocean, and it's dark and there's not a single lighthouse insight or not a single piece of land. And that is exactly how I felt. I kind of felt very, very lost on so many different, freaking decisions I could make to change the trajectory of my life. I felt more helpless, if anything, because I was like, I could go down this route or this route or this route. And that can get very, very, very overwhelming. Just knowing that I'm not the only person who clearly feels this was very comforting, and I needed that comfort during this time. This book was recommended to me by a family friend, and I love her for recommending it to me because I had reached a point of this whole job application where I just felt exhausted. And she was like, "You need to read this book." She and her husband recently reread it, and she was like, "Wow, I didn't realize how applicable this is no matter your age in life." And so I bought it, I read it. I pretty much read it in a week. So it's called What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20. I think it's in this book where there's this one saying which I highlighted because I was like, yeah. I'm someone who, as a fellow Gen Z, obviously, I've always had this desire to be able to wake up for a job and know that I am happy and passionate and I love it. A lot of, I think, the people I was around always thought that that was a very romanticized view to have, but I was so determined to do so. And it sucks, and I hate to say that there was a point during this whole job application time in my life, post grad time, where I started doubting that, and I was like, you know what, anyone, just freaking employ me, just hire me. F it if I like the job or not. I know that every job that I go through is a stepping stone to what I'll end up doing in my life. When I read this book, she brought up a quote. I want to read the whole thing actually because it's actually really beautiful, I realize now. So, the sweet spot is where your passion overlaps with your skills in the market. If you can find that spot, then you're in the wonderful position in which your job enriches your life instead of just providing the financial resources that allow you to enjoy life after the workday is over. The goal should be a career in which you can't believe people actually pay you to do your job. And a quote that sums this up is by this philosopher. The master of the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation, his love and his religion. He simply pursues his vision of excellence in whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he is always doing both. When I read this, I knew instantly that I could not let go of the fact that I want to be in a role and be in a job and be with a company or agency or whatever it is that allows people to wonder if I'm actually working or am I just living my life. When I read it, I knew instantly I cannot give up this want to have this kind of life. So I persevered, and thankfully it all became worth it. Now, before everything became worth it, I do want to reflect and talk about the biggest spiral that I had throughout this year. um I laugh about it now. It was not funny when I was going through it, but I guess without that I would not be where I am today. Cheesy as that sounds. So when I came back from a holiday for my birthday and for Eid, I came back thankfully and gratefully to an internship. I was an editorial assistant at an online fashion magazine. It was a really insightful month. It was only a month long, but it was really insightful. I learned a lot about the industry or how things work on an online fashion magazine. But I also learned a lot about myself. I learned what I want and what I don't want. And it was really great, I think, having that whole month of structure because it was a 9 to 5 and there was not a single day that I was really working from home. It was always in person. Well, the one thing that I take away from that experience that I think I reflect on a lot, I'm really glad happened, is having something like that, especially within fashion for me as someone who loves fashion, kind of ignited the spark in me to create content more consistently. So I created content almost every day, if not every other day, on outfits that I was wearing, and I pushed myself to showcase what I could do in my editing and everything, or my storytelling in engaging ways. And it was it's beautiful for me to reflect on now because I think I pushed myself. I remember thinking posting every day is going to be exhausting. How do I not run out of content? How do I edit in a way that every single day I can post? So it gave me a new challenge as well, which is really great. And like I said, it pushed me to create something new every single day or something refreshing. So it challenged my creativity. And I'm really glad that it did because I think I wouldn't be where I am today with the job that I have if I didn't do that. I finished the internship and it was June. And during this internship, I was also interviewing for other positions with other companies, and I had this one job come up to me that I was poached by this company with this job. I actually applied for a different job, and then the application closed down, but they had my CV on file, and they were like, "Hey, we have this role that is coming up for this one brand. We think you'd be a great fit." I interviewed for it and whatnot, and I thought it went really well. Fast forward a week, and I received an automated rejection email. That was the last straw, because I think because it felt like there was so many carrots dangled in front of me throughout this 1 year of applying for a job. This one felt the most within reach in a way, and it was just snatched away without. And I did contact them, being like, "Can I get more information? What is it that I lacked?" Because I have had interviews in the past where, when this happens, I just ask them, "What is it that can I improve on, or what is it that the other candidates had that I lacked?" And I usually get a response, but this time I didn't. We move. It was tough. It was really, really tough. I broke down. I've had this happen to me in the past, and I remember one of the first things I thought about was, I wish my mom and dad were here, because I needed the biggest hug from them. And this time when I went through this rejection, coincidentally they were here. They were actually leaving to go back home after being here, but I guess, just the right timing of things. And they were here, so I got the biggest hug from them. Broke the fuck down, tears, endless streams. It was really tough. And then that whole of June was just the darkest place I had been in a while. For the first time ever, I was really starting to doubt myself and my skills and my experience. And I think I had to get things in order for my future. I had to start thinking, I've gone almost a year now with nothing. I haven't gotten any drastic movements in this whole job application. Maybe I should consider doing my master's now, because I always wanted to do my master's, but I was like, maybe I'll wait. I want to work a bit before I do it. Though the clock was ticking. And then something came up, an opportunity came up, and I jumped for it. And it was with a small social media agency, and it happened really quick. I can't lie. Did the interview and everything because they were looking for an assistant with their team growing. Went really well. I questioned it though, because obviously this whole job thing is like being in a relationship. So I've been in clearly a lot of toxic ones in the past. So when a good interview happens, I'm like, who knows? Anything can happen. I've had so many good interviews only for it to end badly and not get it and just have a rejection email. However, then a week goes by, I get a formal email and they'd like to formally offer me the job. So that's where I am now. I wake up every day not only grateful for the opportunity, but also completely in love with what I do. And little me would be so proud of me to see how far I've come, because the past year has not been easy. Job applications have been the most draining part of my life, especially as someone who is very much so a go-getter and someone who needs to always strive for something to achieve. Everything else that I've not gotten has been a blessing in disguise, especially with someone like me who, I'm quite religious, definitely, and I think that everything that's happened has been happened for a reason, and that there's always something in store for you that is meant for you, and nothing can come in the way of that if it is meant for you. Here are a few lessons that I've learned as a post-grad applying for a job in an unstable market and economy. The first one, give yourself grace. Allow yourself that space to know that things are difficult and that things may not always go the way that you want. Do not be too harsh on yourself, and trust me, I can say that because I expect a lot from myself half of the time. Nobody else expects much from me. I, however, expect a lot from myself. So give yourself grace. Lesson number 2, take a step back. Take 2 steps back. Get yourself out of the city. If you're like me and you're living in a city that is as busy and loud as London, it can be really overwhelming, because unknowingly you've kind of associated some spots with certain things in your life, obviously. And for me, it's just being in a city is associated with hustle, bustle, and achieving things. And sometimes I needed to get out, whether it was a trip to Brighton, whether it was a trip up to visit my sister in Oxford, whatever it was, just getting myself out of the city and out of the mindset or being in that kind of bubble of just disappointment or work does absolute wonders for your mind and for your mental, emotional well-being. So take a few steps back, breathe, allow yourself room to breathe. Number 3, try and be as present as possible. I think the one thing I got quite good at as time went on was accepting that things were going shit but not letting that completely cloud over or haze over my current experiences and blessings in life. Always count your blessings. And I always remind myself, you're young, have fun, you know? Lesson number 4, timing. I know. It is the most frustrating thing ever throughout this whole time, timing. But what I mean by timing is it's not only you, it is also the job or whatever it is that is coming for you. It has to come at the right time. It has to align for them as much as it has to align for yourself. With that, perseverance comes in. You gotta keep persevering, you gotta keep trying, and just hope eventually one of it sticks. I definitely reached that 150 plus mark of job applications. I've had friends who have reached the 200 mark. It doesn't stop because you live in a world that is very saturated as well, and that, you know, getting talent is available everywhere. But I don't know, I mean, the fact that I have both a good job that I love as well as a team that I clearly am going to blossom in, it is something that I'm so grateful for. It's a roller coaster. I wish someone told me how difficult it could be, and it would be after graduating, just having your whole life dictated for you by grades or experiences or people your whole life from the time. I mean, my parents put me in kindergarten at 14 months old. I've been in school since then, and I graduated last year when I was 22. So suddenly getting pushed out into the real world where I dictate my own time, what I do, how I do things, and the other half of it not being within my control, like jobs, it is really frustrating and a bit of a culture shock. But it's an adjustment, and you're not alone. And I hope that somewhere, if this reaches someone who, you know, possibly needs this kind of confirmation that things eventually do find a way of working out, I hope that it helps. If not, this is really just a great video for me to reflect on in the next couple of years, because girl, sometimes I feel like I need that. The times that I took a step back and kind of looked at how much I've done so far, and for me as well as a creative, that meant every time I updated my portfolio, it was only then that I realized I've come a long way, whether it was in my photography or in social media or whatever it was. It's nice to, you gotta give yourself flowers and give credit where it's due. So that was a little story time of the job application and post-grad life, and I really hope that this helps someone, because it's a tough time, but you're not alone, honestly. And I hope that this video was helpful or informative, or just, if anything, a lovely nice little story time in my life. That's my life. That's all for now from me, and hopefully I'll see you real soon with a new video. I hope you enjoyed it. Just me yapping, talking to a camera and yapping. But yeah, sending you all lots and lots of love, and hopefully I'll see you soon.